And your book really is so different than any other book on happiness. And the
Really?
reason I believe it's different is, I'll give an example. I read a book a long time ago called The Magic of Thinking Big. And this is a book that came out in like the 50s or the 60s. Great
Hmm.
book. There was a chapter I really liked in that book, and it was about how if we took our brain and we called the brain the mental factory, right? And inside the mental factory, we've got Mr. Triumph and we have Mr. Defeat. Those are the two
Okay.
foremen in the factory.
Yeah.
And, Mr. Triumph, he speaks good, right? He uses language such as, I get to do this. I had this challenge, but I got this out of it in a positive way. And then on the other side, there's Mr. Defeat, who talks about the challenges and how it's happening to him and how he has to do all these things. He's got to do this. And he explains the difference in how one person, we each have these two foremen in our brain. But then the chapter ended, and I was like, okay, I got a really good picture of this. But your book is about happiness, but it's niche in the idea of you go deep into the self-talk. And I really liked specifically, I bring it up purposefully, but specifically, I really liked the part about switching the language on things from I have to do this, or I've got to do this, or this has to be done, to I get to do this,
Hmm.
right? It paints a very different picture in our mind when we say I get to. Like my father the other day, my grandmother's in a nursing home. She's been there for a long time. And my dad said, yeah, I've got to go see my mom. I've got to go see her. And I said, and again, it's my dad, which is why I said this. I wouldn't be saying this to everybody, but I was
Right.
like,
Normally, these words, you don't give advice to other people, but in
yes.
your family, yeah, you can.
And you make that very clear in the book, which I'll
I
mention too,
do.
which I love. But I looked at my dad and I was like, Dad, how would you feel different if you said you get to go see your mother? And he was like, yeah. He's like, you're absolutely right. It does make a difference in how you feel. And I was like, just the difference in one word can change how you feel. So you did so well in creating a book that, again, your book it's 200 pages, but it's not just repeating the same thing over and over. It's always something different. And you were able to create 200 pages of substance on the particular area of self-talk when I haven't read any other book like that. So I commend you for it, and I thank you for keeping me engaged. But I got to know, why self-talk specifically? Did you have someone in your life who helped you, who said to you, Randy, what if you get to do this versus you have to do this, or this hard experience, what if you framed it in this way? Like, did you have a mentor like that yourself, or did you discover this on your own?
That's a really good question, and no one has asked me that before. So let me think about that for a second. I will, while I'm thinking, tell you that I don't think I came up with anything brand new for this book. I'm very clear at the beginning that The Magic of Thinking Big from the 1950s, How to Win Friends and Influence People, all of those are amazing books. And people have been striving. I don't like the word struggling. I like striving for happier moments forever and thinking about it. Go to the Bible, go to Aristotle, go to any kind of quotes that come, and many of them are centuries old. So this have to get to is something I picked up along the way. I didn't make it up, but I use it. And what makes us each unique are the stories that we use that only happen to us, that illustrate how the words work. And that's what I tried to do in the book, is take a story from my life and go, well, because the words are like little time bombs in our brains. And maybe that's not a great phrase, but that's what I use in the book. And because there's something called bridging associations in our mind. And I learned this partly in my year after I left morning radio. I spent a year traveling around the country teaching stress reduction. And some of the research got me thinking about what I did. So I think rather than one mentor, it is what I learned in teaching this material that really changed what I did. And I found that it's easy to try to change your words, that's a cheap experiment. Just like, oh, I notice I'm saying to myself, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'll give you an example that's not in the book. So I do speak in the book about what I call relationship high school, which sadly was not in high school, but between husbands, where I learned finally what I hadn't learned in my 20s because I was busy trying to be a star for psychological reasons that we won't go into here. I thought fame would make my life great. And what I was really seeking was a relationship that was healthy. And my first husband, I would say, was not the healthiest choice, but it is what it is. And, 2 children, and I don't regret anything. But I forgave him for abandoning the family, but I didn't forget. And in between, I said, okay, I've got to learn to have a healthier relationship. And so 16 years between husbands and raising 2 kids took a lot of my energy, as it should. But there were periods where I wasn't with anybody, which is fine. But what I began to say to myself when a relationship would break up was, I always meet new men instead of it always crashes and burns. It's just a change of phrase, because when we say a word, it leads us somewhere else. So when your dad says, I get to go visit my mother, it leads you to other phrases like, I'm so lucky I can drive. I'm so lucky she's still alive. I'm so lucky I have the time. When I have 3 adorable, chaotic, noisy, big personality grandchildren, age 6, all from the same daughter who's just, had 3 in diapers at one point, and they live 3 weeks away. And I've, especially with COVID, am privileged to help a lot. Has my income gone down because I'm busy grandparenting? Yeah. But I could say, oh, I have to go help with the grandchildren. And if I ever say that in my head, I immediately switch to, I get to. You know why? Because the other grandmother lives in England and would give anything to be able to have the kids come over and, have crayons all over the dining room table. So I get to help with my grandchildren. Leads me to, I'm so fortunate that my daughter and I have a great relationship, that my son-in-law loves me too, that the kids are nearby. So it's not so much the word change, but what the word change leads to.
Yes.
And so I would say, in answer to your question, I've had many mentors, living and dead, who in reading books, reminded me of things to get myself unstuck and make things better. I didn't make up any of these phrases. It is what it is. Everyone says that, we're all connected. Well, that's a phrase, but maybe that's mine. But I used in this way, all will be well. I think the one that is unique to me is the humor phrase, because, isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Leads you to a very different place than poor me.